Hi, Teeyana. Welcome. Thanks for joining me today. It's very nice to meet you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. And thank you
Mhm,
for being here.
mhm.
Just to quickly kick things off, can you tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about yourself and tell me how you found Carnivore? How did it all start for you?
Yeah. So my name's Tiana. Everyone calls me T. I'm from Queensland, Australia. I started my carnivore journey almost 2 years ago. Actually, on the 1st of May this year, it'll be exactly 2 years. And I remember it was halfway through the time that my dog was pregnant. And I just kept thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to do this? You know, focusing on her and helping her when she finally does give birth, and there's going to be puppies, and oh my goodness, what am I going to do? So it was kind of it was actually happening at the perfect time because I needed to be really, really active and busy with her, and I wasn't having to focus on food, which is good. So I came across the carnivore journey by I think it was just sort of by chance. My husband and I were sort of talking about it one day, and he said how he had seen Joe Rogan, or he had listened to Joe Rogan's podcast or something or other, and had heard that, he had been on something similar. And I had heard of carnivore before we actually started because I used to do like low carb keto, probably from, maybe 2015, 16 onwards, because I used to do weightlifting. And so I was super fit and super strong and, was competing, doing Olympic weightlifting, not in the Olympics, but the sport Olympic weightlifting. And so, was competing, was doing like fasted, intermittent fasting and fasted competitions and all this kind of stuff. And I just felt the best that I ever did in my life at that time. I was really strong. And at the time, carnivore was like this extreme. Like I just remember people were like, at the time, if you were eating low carb or keto, you were extreme because it was like, how could you omit, so many food groups? And I thought, I'm thriving. I'm in the best health I've ever been, though. And so I remember back then, carnivore was very much this, like that's for extreme people kind of thing. So I had heard of it, but I hadn't sort of dabbled in it much. And my husband mentioned it a couple of times before we actually started. It was sort of like, oh yeah, I heard Joe Rogan was talking about it, and I was like, oh, okay, didn't sort of pay much attention to it. And then by chance we saw a video and we both watched it on YouTube and we went, oh, okay, that's interesting. Then we came across Homestead How. Kerry's, and Homestead How, very well known in the carnivore community. And I think it was one of his videos where he did, it was either like an update video or it was like one of those ones like 5 things to do when you start carnivore. It was one of those. And we watched it and we just went, what? Because his transformation was huge. And not just that, but he, like, not just even physically, but, he often talks about like how he was on all these medications and how he stopped using these medications and all this kind of thing. And that just spiraled for us. That was like a Monday. And I swear we were up all night the next day. Any free moment that we had, we were watching videos about carnivore. Of course, the algorithm then picks up that that's what you're watching. Then we stumbled across Bill Knott and all these other people. And we just watched every video. We learned about all the doctors, like pretty much straight away. We knew who they were. And we just went, like, it can't be that this very niche group of people who all have different ailments, sicknesses, they're from all over the world, they're from all different ethnic and cultural backgrounds, and they're all having the exact same result. Like there's a pretty important, sort of connector here. And then by Thursday of that week, we went to Costco. We chucked out everything that wasn't, animal based, potato chips, pastas, rice, anything, sauces, anything that we just chucked everything out that we had. And then we went to Costco, bought all the meat that we like to eat. And then by Friday, we were like, yeah, we're officially starting carnivore. So it happened pretty quickly for us because I think that once we saw that video, we were sort of in disbelief, but like that happy disbelief, sort of like, oh, wow, is this something that we could do? Because regular people, are doing this from all over the world. And then that's kind of what kicked it off. And so that happened the 1st The 31st is when my dog had her first litter. And so, I was very lucky to already be 1 month into carnivore because, as I said, I helped her with her birth, and we had 11 baby puppies running around our place, and it was, winter had just started. So there was just mayhem and chaos everywhere. We had my dad visiting here. We had a friend of ours staying with us. We had to replace the fence. Like, there was just a lot going on. And not once did I think about food. And it wasn't because I was deliberately not thinking about food. It was because the food had been simplified so much to carnivore. And I was going through that phase where I was losing a lot of weight, pretty quickly, that it was just like I wasn't thinking about it. So that's how we kind of came across carnivore and how we started with carnivore.
Wow, that's really cool. I feel like
Mm.
it's awesome how you turn things around, and with so much things going on, like with the puppies, 11 puppies. Um, Quick question. Actually, I just want to mention also, I'm gonna be 2 years carnivore also in May. What
Hmm.
day, or yeah, what day of the month did you start? I started May
First.
1st. How about you?
Yeah, first. We were on the
The
first
first
two.
two? Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so awesome. Wow.
Yeah. So it's a
I feel
pretty
like
easy date to
I
remember.
feel like so many people have like found carnivore.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And it's
exactly.
one
That
of
was the same reason I had too.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. I think I noticed it probably most in like Kerry's videos from Homestead How, where he'd say, "Oh, I'm 500 days carnivore, I'm 1,000 days like he was sort of using that as his metric. And so I don't know if you use an iPhone or not, but in the iPhone you've got that journal app where you can, it's encrypted or whatever, you can take photos. So I took photos of myself, I took videos, I wrote down, this is what I ate today, or this is how I felt today. So that first probably, maybe the first 3 months, I was quite diligent in every day chronicling things, but I did it more as well because I'd watched so many videos and everyone's talking about, oh, there's going to be oxalate dumping and you're going to go through this phase and that phase and then this is going to happen and that's going to happen. Da, 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 da. And, it was so different. And there was, at that particular time as well, it seemed like there was a lot more men that were talking about their experiences. There wasn't as many women as there is now 2 years on. And so for me, it was more like, oh, I want to talk about some of, female health issues that come along so that, later on down the track, I might actually be able to turn around and say, oh, I improved that because of carnivore, or I noticed a particular change in that, within that time frame, and it's possibly related to carnivore. Maybe other women are feeling this as well. So it kind of started like that. But like, I don't know how many days it is now. I'm just going by 2 years because it's almost 2 years coming up soon. But yeah, 2 years carnivore. And it really doesn't feel like it's been that long. If I don't know if you feel the same way.
Totally. I feel the same way. I feel
Yeah.
like it just, went by like so quickly. Yeah. Another curiosity I wanted to ask, like, how long have you been doing weightlifting? Have you been doing that for a while?
No, well, I actually stopped around 2019, 2020. I had been doing it for about 5 years, 4 to 5 years. I had quite a bad injury in 2018, because even though I was probably 10 kilos, 15 kilos heavier than I am now, but I was ridiculously strong. Like, I was muscle. There was just muscle. And I was working on, for a competition, I was working out, and I had a specific sort of program that I had to follow. And I was doing a session where I was doing back squats, and I was coming up, it was about 125 kilos, this back squat. And as I was coming up, my knee just went like a click sound. And I went, oh. And I looked down and my coach was behind me because obviously it was quite a heavy weight. And he's like, oh, all good? And I was like, nah, I don't think so. Something's made a sound. So he helped me, we lifted the weight off and everything. And he's like, oh, what's going on? I said, oh, I don't know. He's like, all right, that's it. Training's done. And then I cooled down and, I didn't drive home straight away. I sort of waited about half an hour, cooled down, spoke, all my mates were there. So we were just hanging out and whatever. And by the time I got in the car, my knee was just swollen like this, full of fluid. And turns out I dislocated my patella and all this stuff happened. So after that, probably for about 2 years after that, I was on kind of like I was still doing a program, but it was very much tied in with like rehab kind of, because my coach and my physiotherapist and everyone was like, you're not going to stop. Like, we can't make you stop. We know you're not going to stop, and so we have to just work around it. And then because I was actually working interstate at the time, so just before COVID kicked off, I came back to Queensland, and I started in a different role that I was in at the time. And just because COVID kicked off, I was like, I can't train. I can't train in my shed. Like it didn't have the same vibe. Like even though all of us were on Zoom and we were training, we were all in our sheds, and we all live out in the country, and it just didn't work. And so I haven't actually done any training since then, even though I absolutely love it. And ideally I would love to get back, not to competition level anymore, but probably just to train, just to get that strength back again. So when I started Carnivore, I was not exercising at all, which was another thing that kind of drew me to Carnivore, because I was like, ideally I do want to get back to weightlifting, but I've got this knee it's okay now. It's not causing me any issues. In fact, it improved when I went on Carnivore, but I just wanted to make sure that physically I was in the best position available when I did go back to lifting weights, that I didn't have any other injuries. So I have not been training since probably COVID kicked off, which is 2020. And I definitely do miss it. I do wish I could go back and train again, but not in the shed this time.
Yeah, that's an awesome experience. Wow, that's quite a while, 5 years, and I'm pretty sure maybe sometimes in the future you'll go back and try to do it again.
Mm.
I started Carnivore because I had like many health issues. Like I had my tennis elbow and I had my skin issues. Like, did you had like any specific did you had any health issues that got better like after going Carnivore? Like
Yeah,
pretty much my health issues got better like after
yeah.
going Carnivore.
Yeah, everything got better. So I have polycystic ovarian syndrome. So a lot of women have polycystic ovarian syndrome. But those that don't know what it is, it's basically, irregular periods, hormone issues with insulin resistance as a result of that. So women, it's a catch-22, because women, the hormones are tied so closely into your menstrual time, and if that's not happening regularly, then all this other stuff kind of kicks off, and you can gain weight, and all this other stuff happens. So it's all very intrinsically linked, and it's not something that it's not like like a bruise, like it'll just come along if you hurt yourself. It's something that you basically sort of, I think, not necessarily born with, but probably a lot more is coming along as a result of the environmental impacts of things, plastics, inorganic food, pesticides, all that kind of stuff. So it was something though that I had from when I was a young kid, and basically I can't have children. And so that's something that sort of plagued me my whole life. It's always kept me heavy. So as a teenager, as a younger woman, I tried every diet, Weight Watchers, cabbage soup diet, only eating this or only eating that, or restricting this or restricting that, or like it doesn't matter, you name it. If it was a diet or a trend, I have tried it. Nothing worked. Not a single thing worked. So the minute I went on Carnivore, probably by the first 3 months, I noticed that all the sort of aches and pains and PMS and hormonal fluctuations that were normally happening completely stopped. I used to get so much pain as it was coming up to that sort of period, in the month, that it was debilitating. I would be in the bed, like I couldn't get up. I was literally bedbound. I would have that much pain. That was gone. That was completely gone. So for women that, and I know Dr. Kiltz, he's a reproductive specialist, and if anyone's watching or has PCOS, I don't know about endometriosis. I think that's a little bit more challenging, and I don't have personal experience with that, but definitely if you're a woman with PCOS or infertility issues, look up Dr. Kiltz. He's a massive Carnivore doctor, reproductive health specialist in the US, and he talks quite a lot about, PCOS and different things. So my PCOS improved like it's almost like I don't have it anymore. I was anemic. I was basically, constantly needing iron infusions. And it would happen like the iron, when I would sort of deplete in iron, it would happen so gradually that I wouldn't sort of necessarily know. I just generally would feel fatigued and generally would feel, tired or whatever. But as I said, I live out in the country. I live on 4 acres. I've got dogs and horses and animals. And, so I kind of attributed to, I've been outside with the animals, or I've been helping my husband build something. I'm probably just tired because of that. I never sort of attributed to that it's going to be an iron deficiency. And then the next thing you know, again, I'm stuck in the bed. My blood sugar is super low. I can't lift my head off the pillow. I'm that unwell. And then, mad dash to the doctor. Oh, your iron is critically low. Here, have an infusion. So that was happening on a yearly basis. In order to try and deal with my PCOS, because PCOS, again, is one of those things where in order to lose weight, it's like catch 22. In order to lose weight, you have to be able to not have insulin resistance, but so many foods cause insulin resistance, which means, again, you get caught up in that cycle of, if I don't eat, I'm not going to lose weight. If I do eat, I'm not going to lose weight. So it's like this constant thing. So the only thing I thought that would help with that was if I had weight loss surgery. So I had weight loss surgery. Oh, I couldn't tell you. I think it's maybe 14 years ago now. Removed the majority of my stomach. My stomach was reduced to about that size. For Aussies or anyone that knows metric, it was about 150 mil in size. So not even the size of a full cup. A cup is 250 mil. It was reduced down to about 150 mil. It's probably expanded a little bit since then. Some people report after this period of time of having weight loss surgery that their stomach has increased back to the size that it was. Mine definitely has not. So mine still, like a kid's meal would probably be the amount of food I can eat. I couldn't eat any more than that. And I still can't drink and eat at the same time. I still have to be careful if I have fizzy drinks compared to, let's say, plain water or like a plain juice or something like that, and food. I can't eat and drink at the same time. I always have to have a break. But in order to try and deal with the PCOS, to force my body somehow to start dropping weight so that my PCOS could get better, I had weight loss surgery. So I had that many years ago. And as a result of that, they removed the part of your stomach that gives you hunger pains or hunger signals, and also removes the section of the stomach that absorbs nutrition and absorbs stuff from food. So I was told basically for the rest of my life, I would need to take like a multivitamin, vitamin B12, vitamin D, for the rest of my life, because I will never, ever be able to absorb it like other people. And I had blood tests every single year, sometimes every 6 months, depending on, how often I was needing these iron infusions. And there's consistently low markers for all of those things, obviously, because I don't have that section of the stomach that absorbs those nutrients. So when I went to Carnivore, I did a blood test before. I did a blood test about 6 months later, and there was not one single thing that was out of whack. My vitamin D was normal range, my B12 normal range, to the point that my doctor said, if you just gave me these results and I didn't know your past history and didn't have your medical history, I would not believe. If you said to me I had weight loss surgery, I would not believe it, because he said the numbers don't suggest that you've had weight loss surgery, because you're not supposed to be able to absorb those minerals and those nutrients. You're not supposed to be able to have XYZ. You're anemic. You're not supposed to have normal levels of iron. I can see that you've got the last 10 years you've been having, shots and this and that and infusions to try and get your iron up, So all of that, my knee. So the knee that I mentioned before that I injured with Olympic weightlifting, obviously it wasn't something that needed to be surgically fixed. It was fixed with a lot of rehab, physio, chiropractic, that kind of thing. But it would hurt every so often, especially, like when you hear the old people say, oh, when the wind changes, my, knee hurts or my hip hurts or whatever. It's getting cold, and this is hurting. So the pain, but the thing is, I never used to, the way that, let's say this is your knee, the way that your leg naturally moves up and down steps, I would constantly feel that part over the knee, like that it was tight. So there was constant pain there. And as I'm moving and walking, couldn't walk up the steps because it was constant pain. That all went. Glasses. I've just had, so my left eye is lazy. I've had that since I was a little kid. But this eye is not. So my glasses, this is just clear glass, and this is the magnified one. And normally they recommend that you get your eyes checked every 2 years. This time I left it, it was like 4 years because I didn't feel like I needed it. I was wearing the other glasses that I had, and I went to the optometrist just recently, when did I talk to Dave? I think in October, November. So around then, I went and got my eye test, and they usually do like this laser scan of the inside of your eye and the back of your eye. And thankfully, because every 2 years I was going to the optometrist and getting all these checks done and scans, they had all these previous scans of my eye, and they were able to see that things that had come up in my eye previously were now gone, totally gone. To the point that the optometrist actually said, "You've got textbook perfect clear eyes." He said, if we were studying right now and they showed a perfect eye, he said, "Your eye is perfect." And I was like, wow. I said, considering I've got this one that's a lazy eye and whatever. And he says, he goes, "I want you to wear your glasses when you feel you need to, if you're working on the computer or you're looking at artificial light, all day, just to take that strain off your eyes a little bit." He's like, "But," he says, your glasses that you last wore, the last 2 prescriptions, they're actually too strong for you." So I went back in what I needed to in terms of my glasses, in terms of the strength of my glasses. My parents did as well. My parents are both carnivore. My dad is 70, my mum's 66. They both went back on their glasses. These are older people who need, glasses. Both of them went back in the strength of their glasses since they've been carnivore. So they're probably the ones that I can think of off the top of my head. But just in general, even something, my asthma. I've been an asthmatic since I was 14 months old. Had my first asthma attack. Obviously, I was very little, was a baby. And then my parents found out, obviously, when I had the asthma attack, that I was allergic to very specific things. So feathers, mold, pollen, grasses. So if the grass gets cut, I used to have all the windows closed because I would have a full-on asthma attack. And really bad allergies, seasonal allergies, and particularly where I live in Queensland, because it's subtropical weather. Sometimes things tend to bloom a little bit longer, or they'll bloom a little bit earlier because it's warmer. And the last 2 years of carnivore, I have not taken. I've taken antihistamine when I got bitten by an ant, but not because of pollens. So not because of environmental things that were giving me an allergic reaction. It was because I got bitten by a fire ant on my hand. My hand had swollen up. And I haven't had to use my asthma medication whatsoever. I had, touch wood, I have not. I used to be, like everyone, subject to seasonal cold and flu. Have not had anything like that. I've not had to take any of my asthma medication. I take it around with me, obviously, because at the end of the day, I'm still an asthmatic and need to have access to medication if anything goes wrong. But it's all those things that used to bother me. They just don't bother me at all anymore. And it's gotten to the point that the other day I was actually going through my dog's, because my dog has a bag for her training. It's full of leads and this and that I might need. And I went to put my keys in, and in this pocket, this smaller pocket, and I thought, it's banging on something? What's in there? And there was a Ventolin inhaler, and I thought, I forgot it was even in there. Like, that's how often I reach now for those things. So yeah, in terms of health benefits, in terms of physically healthy, I don't think I've ever been this physically healthy in my life. I don't think I've ever been through a period of time where I've not had something that's bothering me. Now, if I hurt myself, like now, this hurts here, but that's because my dog grazed me with his tooth. This hurts here because I slammed something against. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, if I do have something that bothers me, it's because I've physically hit myself on something, or, picked up some wood and got a splinter or cut myself. Like, it's not because of anything related to my sort of autoimmune or anything like that. And I think that especially when people get past that sort of first 90 days and get more to that sort of 5-6 month point of carnivore, you can't go back. You can't, because you think, I'm just going to get sick. Why would I subject myself to that again?
Yeah, exactly my thought as well. Wow, that's a lot of
Mm,
health improvements, and I like hearing those. And I know
mm.
you mentioned your doctor, like, give you the result, like, your blood test and everything. I think you have an awesome doctor, like, telling you all this result that, you got a history with him. Did your doctor ever recommended like a treatment like before carnivore? What was the treatment? Basically, yeah. Um, did he
Yeah.
say or she say like lifestyle change or maybe like more pills or insulin management?
Yeah, so the doctor that I'm seeing now was not actually the doctor that I'd been seeing for the majority of that period of time where I was unwell. I was seeing a different doctor, and in the beginning, he was fantastic. I loved him so much, and I still think he's a great doctor. I just think that the path that I'm on and the path that he's on don't align anymore. Probably when COVID kicked off, because it was so that area where we used to live it's another country sort of area, but it's getting a lot busier. There's a lot of development and stuff, so there was more people moving to the area, and so it went from that I could go and see him and talk to him about something to you've got 5 minutes or you've got 10 minutes, and you literally go in there with it, your notepad, and you're like, okay, this happened. And then he would say, oh, take this pill, take this medication, go see this specialist, blah, blah, blah. And I just felt that he got to the point that he was too busy because he was the main doctor there. It was his practice. He wasn't taking new patients anymore. We just weren't aligning. So about 2 years ago, actually, probably just after I started Carnivore is when I started seeing the doctor that I'm seeing now. And he was fantastic because I went in and I said, listen, I've been on this carnivore diet thing for, at this point, it was like 6 months or something. And I said, I don't want to take medications. I don't want to, unless I'm really like, if it, I've been bitten by a bat and I could get rabies. Yeah, okay. But, I don't want to take unnecessary medication that I don't need. If it's going to save my life, if I'm in a critical situation, it's going to save my life, yes, I will take the medication. But I'm not going to just take nonsense. I don't want you to push anything on me. I want to live this lifestyle and I want you to respect that I live this lifestyle. And I want you to go with me on the journey. So obviously, we'll talk about things. If a result comes up that you don't like or that I'm unsure of or that you're unsure of, let's investigate it further. Let's not automatically put a band-aid solution on it. And he said, okay. So that was really fantastic because he flat out said, look, I know nothing about carnivore. I've heard a little bit about it, but I know nothing else about it. But he said, but as long as you're healthy and the things that we can measure, the metrics that we can measure remain okay. He's like, who am I to tell you what you can and can't do, kind of thing. And so I really appreciate that. I really appreciate the fact that he um, was like that, but also that I could go to him and be really honest and say to him, I understand you're going to get busy. I understand that your time is just as important, but the minute you start becoming a person who starts wanting to medicate me or, you know, whatever, I'm done. I'm gone. I'm out of there. I'm not going to participate. My grandmother, God rest her soul, she passed away last year. She was 96 years old. She had never taken any medication. All the food that she cooked, all the food that she consumed, she made it herself. She did not buy things from the supermarket. She didn't eat potato chips. She didn't eat junk. All the vegetables that she grew were her own vegetables. They were unsprayed. They were clean, that she grew in her backyard. Everything that she ate, she made herself. Even the bread that she ate, she made herself. And like, you can't tell me that there's not something in that, carnivore or not, but you can't tell me that there's something in that. The fact that she ate such a clean diet, lived such a clean, healthy, just a standard lifestyle, and at 96, years old, that was how long she went. If you said to her even to take like a headache pill, like just like a paracetamol or an ibuprofen, you would get the dirtiest look, the absolute dirtiest look, because she called them killers. She actually called them, she's like, I'm not consuming those killers. That's what she called them. And we used to laugh at her because that's what she said. But you know what? I think she was on the right wicket. She knew what she was doing, kind of thing. And so I'm really grateful that my doctor has been really forthcoming, and happy to support the carnivore journey. We've got a bit of a give and take there. He's like, yeah, I'll support you, but let's do some blood tests, or let's do this, or let's do that, and let's see what's changing, what's not changing, you know. So yeah, he's been fantastic in that. And thankfully, as I said, because I only started with him the last couple of years, he got my previous history from my other doctor. And it had just arrived as I went to get my results from him after I had had my blood tests. And he said, if I didn't know, you know, this wad of of your history, if I didn't know that, he said, I wouldn't believe it. I wouldn't believe what I'm seeing in front of me. He said, because it's contradictory.
Yeah, that's a really
Mm.
cool relationship with your doctor. And you know, like you said, you can be honest with him and you can tell him, you know, and he doesn't know much about carnivore, which is pretty open also. Wow.
Mm.
You know, my health issues, like I had like assumptions like before carnivore, I'm saying like I had like I assumed that it was caused by stress or maybe genetics or maybe
Hmm.
it's just maybe a portion of it, maybe diet related. Did you had any assumption what was causing your health issues in the past before finding out carnivore?
Yeah, yeah, exactly what you said. I thought some of it was genetic. So, you know, I was trying to find out, you know, oh, what sicknesses and illnesses and ailments does my mum have, and what does my dad have, and what do my paternal grandparents have, and my maternal grandparents have, and do I take, you know, because at the end of the day, you're 50% your mum and 50% your dad. Doesn't matter which way you put it. That's, you know, at least how much you are. You take bits of DNA from both of them. So there's going to be, you know, 25% of your maternal grandmother in there somewhere in some capacity that you don't know, you know, and that may be that you inherit an illness or something from that person. And you know, I'm not a doctor, so if I say anything incorrect, you know, or scientist, you know, I'm happy to stand corrected. But my point is, yes, there is an element of you that thinks, you know, yeah, okay, some of this is genetic or some of it is environmental. Maybe if I change my environment, some of it will change. Okay, what about some of it is, you know, could it be, for example, organic versus inorganic food consumption? Could it be stuff that's wrapped in plastic or not wrapped in plastic? Could it be, you know, like then you go down that route. Oh, okay, no, low tox or no tox living. Is that going to contribute? You know, if I'm wearing this t-shirt and it's a cotton t-shirt, but it's got this print and the print's got a bit of plastic, is that going in my skin? Like, you know, so all of that comes up to you. You know, you sit there and you look at that. You also look at yourself. You think, oh, I can only afford to buy, you know, this $5 packet of mince, and that bloke over there can buy a $30 piece of steak, and maybe he's healthier because he can buy the, you know, the better steak or the better, you know, food compared to me. So yeah, all of that comes into play. But I think, like what I said kind of earlier, when we started that, when we first started watching Kerry's videos, and then we just went down this rabbit hole of watching all these videos, the message that kept coming forward is, this is men and women all over the world, in first world countries, in middle countries, in third world countries, people that have grown up sometimes in a village in a country and then gone and lived in a really big city somewhere, you know, somewhere in the world where there's pollution, where there's this, there's that, there's all this stuff going on, and everyone is genetically different and culturally different and ethnically different, and yet every single person, you know, give or take, is having the exact same result. Every single person is losing weight. Every single person is reducing the amount of inflammation in their body. Every single person, people there with diabetes, people with insulin resistance, people with physical ailments, people with mental health issues, neurodivergent. It doesn't matter what it is, all these people were experiencing an improvement in their general well-being and in their life. And I think that that's what at the end of the day makes me sort of, I think that's what keeps me going. And I think as well that that's what, because I used to be really like militant about it, like, no, everybody needs to go on carnivore. Everyone should change their diet. Everyone should become carnivore. Your life will improve. We're all going to live like vampires for 300 years. And, blah, blah, blah. And then I kind of, I calmed down a little bit. I still believe that, but I'm probably not as militant about it, because at the end of the day, obviously, every person has their own journey in life and what they're willing and not willing to do, right? So, you know, it's accepting people where they are in the journey that they're on. But, I definitely still hold that as like a core belief of like, it doesn't matter how different we all are. This one single thing is proving to improve our lives. And I cannot understand how anybody could not want to do it or would not be willing to change their beliefs or stance on carnivore or on the standard Australian/American/UK/Western diet, just because they're not willing to turn around and say, hey, I was wrong, or hey, my belief was wrong. It's just something that holds me, you know what I mean? The fact that we can all be so different and still get the same result, you know?
Yeah, I feel the same way. How you put it, like I used to be also like militant about it. Like, everyone has to go carnivore. Like we're gonna be vampires. This is the best way. But I think over time, I kind of like, okay, maybe this is not the correct way to do it. Maybe just, let me stop, pushing people to do things, to go this route. Like you said, like journey, they're on their journey, finding this out, I think
Mm.
is the way. Teeyana, what was your favorite food before you went carnivore?
I could go a burger any day. I love a good burger. I love food in general, but I love a burger. A nice burger, nice bun, you know, meat patty, melted cheese. Like I'm a very comfort food person. So if it comes to like that kind of thing, I love a good burger. I love sushi rolls with crumb chicken. I love sushi rolls with crumb chicken. I'm not really big, like I'm not a huge, oh, it's got to be pizza. That I love a good pasta with fresh ingredients. There's got nice, good quality olive oil, that kind of stuff. So I love lots of different food. I love different culture foods. I love different styles of foods, but it's got to be something that's really hearty and really good. Traditionally, like my family comes from the Balkans, and so we have a lot of very basic. We call it peasant food because it's very basic. It's things like, skinless sausages, roast meat that's been cooked on the spit, cheese burek or meat burek, which is like a pastry with meat filling or cheese filling. Then you can have like a cornbread type of dish as well. It's very dry because this is used for people that need to survive in the winter, that are probably tilling the fields out in their village. Very, very, we call peasant food. So that kind of comfort food is my favorite. So sometimes I can't eat my favorite comfort foods anymore, particularly when the weather does start changing, and I think, oh yeah, I'd love, this particular dish. And it's not that I can't because I'm, saying like, no, I can't. I know that it's not going to be good, because it might have something in there, and I just think it's not going to be worth it. I can eat it, but it's going to make me sick. So generally, any type of comfort food is my favorite. But funnily enough, one of the things that actually we can eat, it's a Balkan dish called tvarke, which is basically really fatty segments of pork, just fat, pure fat, and it's basically deep fried in itself. But when I make it, I do it with a little like really fatty pork belly, so there's a little bit of meat through it. And I remember as kids when my grandmother would make it, they used to say, oh my God, you can't eat too much of this. This is so unhealthy. It's going to clog your arteries. It's going to do this, that, and the other. And it's so funny because when I was talking to my mum and dad about getting them onto carnivore, I said, you do realize you can eat tvarke every day because it's pig fat. That's what it is. It's deep fried pig fat with a little bit of meat. And they went, oh yeah. Oh yeah, we're down for this. So some foods, funnily enough, I can still eat them, even foods that I grew up that were culturally significant. Some I can't, obviously. That's probably a shame. I think the most important question is if you could pick a food that had no, okay, so lettuce, for example. Lettuce is disgusting. It's plain, it has no taste, and it has no calories, right? But if you could assign that to something else, what would it be? For me personally, it would be wheat. Because think about it. If you can make bread, if you can use it for pizza dough, you can use it for burgers. like buns. You can use it for sandwiches. It's got no calories, right? You can still eat sandwiches. You can still eat pizza. You can still eat burgers, but you don't have the inflammatory issues of wheat. So I think that's the core question probably that needs to be asked. Like, which food can we turn from the qualities that lettuce has? What can we put that on something else? So let's put it on wheat so we can still have bread, right?
Yeah. That's a good question. I just can't think. I
Mm.
just can't see myself anymore. Eating lettuce in a table. I can't picture it anymore. But
Yeah.
Teeyana, what does your typical day or week of eating look like now that you're a carnivore? Do you pretty much keep it consistent, or do you switch things up? Maybe you can walk me through what you usually eat. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've previously like played around with like intermittent fasting and OMAD and TUMAD and yada yada, yada, all of that. And I just found that that was a bit too restrictive of me because remember I have this much of a stomach. So I just found that that was sometimes a little bit too restrictive. And then it would put me in this cycle of, oh, I need to eat because I didn't eat at this time and I've only got this short window. Da, 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 and then I wouldn't actually consume enough. And then the next day I would feel as if I needed to consume extra. So I don't do any intermittent fasting at all. But if my body asks for it, then I'll do it. If my body doesn't ask for it, I don't do it. So sometimes I'll wake up and I wake up at 4:30, 5 o'clock. Sometimes I'll wake up and instantly I'm like, I'm famished. I'm really, really hungry. Other times I wake up and I take my dogs out for walk, training, do all that kind of stuff, come back, tidy up, do what it is I'm doing, and I might not eat till 10, 11 o'clock. So in terms of when I eat, it's when my body wants me to eat. I usually and prefer to start with bacon and eggs with goat cheese. That's the easiest breakfast you can have. Cook it in butter, render the fat of that bacon, crumble in some goat cheese. Aldi has fantastic quality goat cheese, really, really good price. And it's really, really high quality as well. And so crumble in, it makes it nice and creamy. It's beautiful. So bacon and egg scramble with goat cheese, that's like my go-to in the morning. Again, depending on my day, if I've started my day, but I didn't eat till 10, I'm unlikely to have lunch. But if I've started my day and been hungry straight away off the bat at like 6 o'clock, then I might find I need a little bit of just something to top me off. So I have a lot of these pork scratchings. They're basically like, like pork crackle. They're so good. They're ridiculously good. And I find that they're a really good snack because it's just pure fat, right? So sometimes that can give me, just a bit of a boost. Or again, I'll have boiled eggs or salami or something. I've always been dirty carnivore. I've never been strict carnivore. So I do still have a little bit of dairy, not a lot, but I have salami. I have that kind of stuff. My dad usually makes it. So we have it's not like the store-bought stuff. It's very clean. It doesn't have any bad ingredients and stuff in there. So I usually have that. I have like a little snack, salami, a bit of cheese, a bit of this, something like that. And off I go, boiled eggs, that kind of thing. And then dinner, it's usually just protein. So if it's steak, I've had a bit of an aversion to beef for the last 3 months. I can't. I just cannot consume it. I wonder if it's like slow cooked beef. Yes, I can. But if it's like pan fried, so something like a steak or something that needs something quick, I just think it has an issue digesting in my stomach. I'm just having trouble eating it. So usually I'll have something like pulled beef or pulled pork, or I might have, pork belly. Pork belly is something I commonly have. Chicken thigh, chicken wings, that's something I commonly have. And it'll just be that. So it's just that particular cut. And, that's basically all I have. That's kind of what I do for. Sorry, there's a bit of noise in my house. So generally, I tend to have just that single protein for dinner. I try not to have too much pork belly because I've been experimenting and doing a bit of research, and because I've been in a plateau for a very long time. So I lost I lost 30 kilos in 5 months, and then I didn't lose no weight at all. And I haven't lost any weight at all for months, for almost over a year. other than obviously hormonal fluctuations, that happen every month, but I haven't actually lost any weight. So I've stayed the exact same weight. And it's been a bit of a pain because I don't understand why. And I've been trying to sort of drill down and work out why and what could it be and how is it happening and all that kind of stuff. And I think maybe because pork belly is quite fatty, it's fattier. If you look at caloric density, it's fattier than, let's say, a ribeye. A ribeye has obviously a lot more protein to fat, but still a fatty cut of beef. But I think the caloric density of, let's say, pork belly, which I could literally eat for every meal and every day, um, I think that it actually, my body uses that fat as fuel instead of my fat as fuel. So I think I've probably done a disservice to myself, and I'm testing that theory at the moment because I've been eating much more fat than protein in my diet, and therefore burning off that fat instead of burning off my fat. Because obviously I'm also at a point, like when you lose 30 kilos, that's what, 6 pounds, or roughly 6 pounds. That's a lot. In 3 months, that's a lot. And to drop it so quickly, your body does go through a period of shock, right? Like your body goes, whoa, whoa, hold on. We are not going on a journey here where, we're going to be hiding in a cave with a bear. Like, you know, we still need your body to function. So I think potentially, just based on just some of the research I've done, that it could be potentially that. So I'm trying to ease up from eating really, really, well, pork belly. That's not that I'm going to eat it every day. I'm trying to ease up of having really, really fatty cuts and trying to rein in that macro kind of a little bit tighter. Not that you need it, right? Like, not that, because that's one thing that carnivore is marketed on, and not just, it's not just marketed on that, it's proof. The proof lies in the work. You don't need to exercise, you just eat meat and you're going to lose weight, and it happens to everyone. But I think when it gets to that point that I've now lost a significant amount of weight and don't have necessarily that much more to go to the weight that I want to be, but it's now at that much tighter period where, dietary refinement is probably necessary. Because I walk every day. I take my dogs for a walk. I have a dog walking business as well. I walk other people's dogs. I breed dogs. So I'm doing stuff with dogs all the time. I'm very active. And it doesn't make sense as to why I would be so physically active and still on a carnivore diet and not losing weight. So I wonder, I've been thinking about it for some time. I wonder whether or not, that probably has something to do with it. I've still remained keeping my coffee. I still have a coffee every day, but I have a very, very small amount of milk or cream or goat milk in there. That's just something that I enjoy having. As I said, I've always been dirty carnivore. I've never been a purist. And yeah, that's basically what I do. I sort of toss between it. Like, it's, as I said, chicken thigh, it's either pork belly, sometimes it's a ribeye steak or a sirloin steak, New York strip, I think they call it, or chicken wings or that kind of thing. Sometimes I think, oh, I just want bacon and eggs again, and I have bacon and eggs again. But I eat when I'm hungry, and I try and eat seasonally as much as possible. And I used to do that before carnivore as well, but obviously now, because there's much more restriction, you're not eating fruits and vegetables, I still try and eat that same way, try and listen to my body as much as I can.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I like your options and how you your carnivore approach to eating. You're doing all this fatty pork, the fatty beefs, and then I mean you have your coffee, and then you're still, even as a dirty carnivore, I think that's still pretty awesome to be doing this and being healthy, like a
Mm.
lot of health improvements. And you also mentioned earlier, because both your parents are pretty much carnivore. I think that's really awesome. It's gonna
Yeah.
lead to my next question because in your experience, what is the hardest thing about carnivore? Like for me, it has been like the social gatherings with family and
Mm.
friends. The cravings in the beginning that took like over a year to go away, and then travel with like family, have to scout restaurants. What about you? What's the hardest thing for you, being carnivore?
Yeah. Yeah, I think mine are probably the same. So as I mentioned before, we do live in in the country, and so thankfully that's been good though, because you can't just go to McDonald's, or you can't go to Kentucky Fried Chicken, or you can't go to whatever, because it's 20 minutes away, and at 8 o'clock at night, you're not going to drive 20 minutes. Well, I'm not going to drive 20 minutes just to go get a hamburger. You know what I mean? So like thankfully I'm a bit lazy like that. You know, I think to myself, I'm not getting in the car, and there's no street lights where I live until you get into town, right? So thankfully that's been a good thing, because, you know, I've never had that incentive to just get up and go. That said, though, traveling has been a challenge, because unless you're cooking for yourself, or unless you have kind of done a bit of meal prep for yourself, it is very, very hard to get a carnivore food that's clean. This is another reason we stay dirty carnivore, because even when people have invited us out or invited us to come over there for barbecues and for dinners, the meat has been coated in stuff, you know. And by staying dirty carnivore, at least our body does not have such a hard adverse reaction to consuming something, you know, like that might have a teriyaki sauce on it or something. We try not to, but as well, when people go to the effort of inviting you over, you know, and they go, okay, we'll cook all meat for you, and then you'll have like teriyaki chicken sticks and, you know, pork belly bites that are in like a barbecue sauce. You can't turn around and go, oh, I'm not going to eat this, it's covered in stuff. You know, like they've already made the effort they're consuming only meat for that whole night, and they've already put in the effort. And I just think when it comes to social things, you just got to pick the battles you want to fight, right? So that's one reason we've also stayed dirty carnivore, because if you do need to travel, or you are going out, or you get invited somewhere, you don't want to limit yourself and be like, oh, I can't eat it. You can, right? It's about the level of risk that you're willing to take. If you know, oh my God, I'm going to have this pulled pork, and there's, you know, like there's this awesome American diner. It's about half an hour away from us, but they only go from like Thursday to Sunday or whatever, and only from lunchtime till this time. So if we're out that way, we always stop. But they have this huge platter, and you get like ribs, pork belly bites, pulled pork, pulled beef, you know, blah, blah, blah. But then there's chips, coleslaw, mac and cheese, you know, blah, blah, blah. And how many times, you know, you go and you want to get something like that, and you think, oh, I'm not going to eat my brisket because it touched the mac and cheese and it's going to get a little bit of carbs. Like, you can't live like that. Then again, though, some people need to be that strict, because they know they'll literally have a little piece and they'll taste the pasta and they'll just want to eat more of it, right? So, you know, I understand that some people do have to be that strict, and I understand some people don't. I think the biggest challenge has been that, right? The other biggest challenge is, if I don't prepare it, we won't eat. My husband's not a cook. He doesn't cook. He can do bacon and eggs, which is good, or he'll boil some eggs. He helps out that way. But in terms of the little bit more complex dishes, if we're having pulled beef or brisket, or, you know, pulled pork or something, I'm the one that has to cook. So I try and get ahead of myself by having some of that stuff at least cooked and frozen. You know, I try having, you know, that kind of stuff ready, because, you know, at the end of the day, especially if you've been working outside, or excuse me, or, you know, you're working on the fence, or you're cleaning up around the property, or whatever it might be, the last thing you want to do is come in and go, oh, now I've got to cook this meal that only I can cook, right? So that's probably the only thing. When you're tired, or, you know, if you've been traveling, you come home and you think, oh God, we should just grab a pizza on the way home. You can't do that. But again, for us especially, it's kept us away from those like faux, you know, the faux breads and the fake, or the, you know, adaptations of carnivore type bread, because it takes too long to make, and you have to whip this and then do this and then add this and then stand on the roof, spin around in a circle, jump up and down, and then suddenly you get this carnivore bread, and you're like, it tastes like styrofoam. So thankfully, you know, we haven't been very indulgent in that. But that's probably, I think, for that like ease of ease and convenience of preparing a meal usually ends up being me. So I kind of feel like sometimes I'm working with the dogs, and then I'm doing this, and then I'm doing that. Oh, you know, bugger, I've got to come in and cook. So we try and do things that we can put in like a slow cooker that you don't have to think about. So if you are working outside all day, you know, the meat's going to be ready. Or we try and pick something that if it does need to be pan fried or cooked in the air fryer, like chicken thighs in the air fryer, best thing ever, because you can be going and having a shower and your chicken thighs are cooking, and you're not standing there turning it and thinking, oh God, just finish it so I can then go and have a shower. So there is a few things that you can sort of cook in other ways, and we try and pick meats that we can do that, so that if we are working outside or we've got something going, we're not tied down to that. The other thing I think for me, I mentioned before, I'm a foodie. Like I just I like food. I like different types of food. Like as I said before, I love sushi rolls. I love Mexican food. I love Greek food. I love Italian food. I love Balkan food. Like I love all these different foods, and that's probably what I miss the most. Just being like, oh, I'm out. Oh, I feel like sushi today. I'll get some sushi. Or oh, in this area. Oh, they've got a great French bakery. I'd love to get a French, sandwich. So I think that's probably it for me. Cravings, no, I can get on top of that. I just block it out of my brain. It doesn't exist. To me, the way I worked it out was like I'm allergic. Like I'm allergic. If it's not me, I'm allergic to it. And that just kept me, down the straight and narrow. So I never had issues with that in terms of cravings. And as I said, I'm pretty active. So even if I do have something that's like a cheat, or something that's, because I cook and I bake for so many other people as well. I cook and bake for our neighbors, and, this, that, and the other. And every so often I'll try something, but I've never ever gone to the point of like, oh my God, I have to eat that whole thing now. Like I cook, try, taste, yep, season correctly, off it goes. But I know that I'm active enough during the day that anything I do, even if I do consume something that is not carnivore, I don't have a bad reaction. And I know I'm going to walk it off anyway. So yeah, I'd have to agree with you. Travel, probably ease and speed of preparing meals, and just the fact that I enjoy different foods, and different cultures' foods, and not getting to eat it.
Yeah, I completely agree with the social gatherings examples you gave. I feel like you said in the beginning, we had to pick our own battles, because they may, they go out of their way to like cook things, and then sometimes you just have to really go do dirty carnivore, because
Yeah.
I feel like it's a double-edged sword when it comes to that. Like they can come back to you and say that you don't trust me with the, if I cook you food,
Yeah.
something like that as another example.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And we did that a couple of
Yeah.
years ago. Not a couple of years ago, last year, our neighbors who are sort of behind us, they had a bunch of neighbors over. We had a big bonfire, big barbecue sort of thing for Christmas. And because there were so many people coming, the lady said, look, just everyone will do the meat, like barbecue stuff. But she's like, if everyone can just, someone bring a salad, someone bring a dessert, kind of like a potluck kind of thing. And I went, haha, I'll bring the entree. Like I'll bring the sort of, entree stuff. And I did this huge platter, prosciutto, salami, cheese, things like that. I put olives, sun-dried tomatoes, not for us. I knew the other people were going to eat it. But I did like a full charcuterie board, and thankfully I did, because the meat that they got was awful, and my husband and I just could not eat it. It was really bad quality. But we had enough of the food that I had prepared on that charcuterie board, and everyone ate it, right? Like everyone's picking, everyone's eating everyone's food. You're allowed to do that. But thankfully, we had that there, right? So sometimes it's good if it is like a potluck situation, because then you can bring something for yourself, and it's no one's going to look at your plate and go, "Oh, you're Debbie's cake. Why aren't you eating Debbie's cake?" Or that's John's famous tomato salad. Why aren't you eating it? Because everyone's talking, drinking. It's, Christmas time. Everyone's just catching up. No one's looking at what you're eating. They're just looking to see that you are eating. So sometimes those kinds of outings are probably better, because socially you can kind of blend in. But if you've also brought a dish that is carnivore friendly, like a pulled pork or something like that, even, then people can kind of make it how they want. You can just stand there eating it with a bit of sour cream and off you go. I think that's a good alternative to social events.
Yeah, I totally agree with that approach.
Mm.
Teeyana, if you had to describe the impact of carnivore in your life, what one word would you describe it, and tell me why?
Mm. I'd say revolutionary. That's a big word if you think about what that word means and what kind of things have inspired that. Like if you look at what a revolutionary is, it's pretty someone that's doing something that's pretty life changing. They're making great stands. It doesn't matter what situation it is. And I found that carnivore was revolutionary for me. It completely changed my life. It completely fixed all these issues and health ailments that I had that doctors, many different doctors and specialists said could never be fixed. And it was just a matter of you're just going to have to deal with it and you'll have to live with it for the rest of your life. And it's given me a level of freedom to know my body much better. Because as I said before, now, if I have a scrape or a sore, it's usually because I've done it to myself. I'm carrying something too heavy and I've hurt my wrist, or the dog got a bit rough when he was playing and his tooth has scraped my palm, or whatever it might be. So it's usually like a physical thing, right? If I do hurt myself, it's a physical thing. It's no longer, oh, my sinuses are reacting and I don't know why, because that's what used to happen. My sinuses would flare up and I would look outside. Oh, it's a sunny day. And it is not spring. It is the end of summer. And why are my sinuses flared up? Now I know that it was most likely food, because along this period of time, I have tried fruits and vegetables again because I want to see what happens to my body. So, I'll say, okay, today I'm going to try this fruit or this vegetable, see what happens. And then that week, that's the only one that I try, because I want to make sure that what's happening to my body is true and accurate. And some fruits and vegetables literally make me swell up. My tongue starts to swell. I start getting hives. I start getting itchy. That's from some fruits. Some vegetables, I feel like I'm sick. I have a lot of stuff here in my throat. Like I feel like I'm getting a head cold. I have that feeling of like congestion, runny nose, and I think, oh my God, all I've had is a whatever cucumber, but it creates that reaction. So I think that my body now is it's running like a well-oiled machine, much better than it probably ever has. And now if something does happen, then I can usually pinpoint it to, maybe I ate something. And sometimes it can be like what I said before, someone's cooked you dinner, it's got a bunch of sauces and herbs and stuff on there, and you consume it and you think, oh, I'll be fine. And your stomach is like, and you're going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, this hurts so much. And that's usually because even though it's meat, it's been covered in some other gunk, So in instances like that, I've been able to, really dial down like what impacts my body and what doesn't. But for me, it's been revolutionary. Being carnivore has been revolutionary. I don't think I could ever not be carnivore. Maybe I'm open to becoming less strict. If I do in the future incorporate more of like a low carb or ketovore lifestyle once I hit my sort of goal weight. If it starts having an impact on my body though, then I'm happy to go back to full carnivore. But that's more for my own selfish want of wanting to travel to Europe a lot more and eat foods. Like, to be brutally honest, like I wanted to be able to go to Europe and be in Italy and eat a beautiful Italian pizza and not think, oh my God, this doesn't fit with my lifestyle. So as long as it fits with my lifestyle, it'll be something that I do forever. But it may not necessarily, one day it may look like 2 meals instead of 3 meals that are fully carnivore, or, some other variation. I'm just going to listen to my body the way that what my body wants me to do, kind of thing. And I think that the whole point is when you're on carnivore and you clean your body up and you reduce the inflammation and you lose the weight and all these sicknesses and ailments go away, then you are so much better dialed in to where you can and can't, kind of make those little, oh, I'll cut the corner here, or I'll make this concession here, or I'll try this. You can do that better and with cleaner information and data than if you're not carnivore, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like your approach and I like how you describe it, revolutionary. I feel like never came across uh, using that word before, but it makes total sense how you describe it.
Mm.
Teeyana, I also feel like most people like trying different diets, they go like incomplete or maybe doing it like halfway and then they move on when you try to suggest something new. Do you think like if you can give an advice to someone, because I know you were able to encourage your parents to pretty much go carnivore. So if you can give an advice to someone who's starting and they have a lot of health issues, but they see that you've gone through a lot of progress, going carnivore, but they're super skeptical. They think they're gonna get some kind of heart disease or heart issues. What would you tell them?
Yeah, so I would highly recommend finding a carnivore mentor. So making sure that you do have someone who is already on the carnivore journey who can mentor you throughout. Because I found that with my parents, that helped a lot. So, for example, when my dad was going through like oxalate dumping and that whole process of like getting rid of oxalates from the body, he called me up one day and he said, I'm itchy. He said, I'm just getting itchy everywhere. And I was like, that's oxalate dumping. So I think that, and it doesn't have to be a formal mentor or anything like that, but it definitely, someone that's already in the community and has gone through the process of carnivore so that they can guide you. Because a lot of the time you think, oh my God, this strange thing is happening and it's totally normal, or someone else has gone through it, right? So number one, get yourself a good mentor. Number two, I think, is also set yourself some goals. And when you set those goals, have those really big, high level goals. I want to lose whatever, 50 kilos, 30 kilos, whatever. Have that really big goal. But then underneath that, start having some smaller goals. I want to be able to run the Boston Marathon. I want to be able to swim 50 laps. I want to whatever, X, Y, Z, right? I want to be a size, 6. I don't know, whatever it is. Make the goals non-food rewards. I remember reading something several years ago, and I don't know the source of it. I can't remember where it came from, but the person was either a dietitian or a nutritionist or psychologist, something or other. And they said the worst thing that people do when they're on weight loss journeys is they reward themselves with food. So if they are a binge eater or have a food addiction, and then they're suddenly on this journey and they've lost 10 kilos, 20 kilos, 30 kilos, whatever, they've lost all this weight, and then they think, I'm going to have an ice cream now. So you are rewarding yourself with the thing that you're addicted to. It's the same as telling someone who's addicted to alcohol or drugs, after 3 months, go and smoke crack. That's not the right thing, right? Like, that's not going to work. So it's just going to relapse them into their addiction. And it's exactly the same with food. Exactly the same with food. So when you set goals, do not set goals related to food. Set them to certain milestones. So for example, when you lose your first 5 kilos, 10 kilos, 20 kilos, whatever. So you have a metric, right? But maybe when you lose your first 5 kilos, you can go and buy those fancy walking shoes that you really, really liked. Like, splurge on those fancy walking shoes. And when you lose 10 kilos, you can go and, I don't know, do something. Go and get some spa treatment or something. Like, just make your goals not food related and tangible to your journey, because then you're going to actually hit those milestones. Number one, the goal is going to, you'll achieve that goal, and then you'll be eager to achieve the next goal, and then you'll be eager to achieve the next goal, because suddenly you go, oh, wait a minute, my goal was to buy Apple AirPods, and I lost 10 kilos and I bought Apple AirPods. Or I want to buy this pink Yeti drink bottle because I walk so much, and like, they're expensive. I don't know how much they are in the US, but in Australia this is $70, so it's not cheap. But you might turn around and say, oh, I'm going to splurge and buy myself this pink Yeti bottle that I really, really love because, whatever. That's going to be our reward. So I think that that's what people have to do. Like, remove foods completely as a reward option and start factoring in those rewards, those other items, clothes, things that will, a new bag for going on walks, or, a staycation or something, just anything that's not food related. So I think that that's the thing. And be accountable. So if you've got an iPhone, there's the journal app. I'm not sure. There's probably something similar on Android. There's heaps of apps around. You can just do it in your notes or whatever. Or if you're not a digital person, you prefer to do it with like a journal, get yourself like a journal, something like this, and be accountable. You don't necessarily have to put your weight, right? Like, if looking at the number kind of puts you off or scares you, don't put the weight. Maybe use a different metric. Pick a pair of pants and a t-shirt that, when you start, this is the t-shirt and these are the pants, and I'm starting today, right? And then in a week's time, say, oh, I noticed that, it's not bunching up around my stomach anymore. Or I noticed that, it's not bunching up on my arms, or it's sitting differently. And keep a journal, like, write to yourself, today was really hard. I really wanted to eat this, Danish pastry that they had at work. And, I couldn't stay for the morning tea because I just couldn't look at this. So I turned around and walked off, and I went back to my desk and I went back to work. Yeah, great. That's huge. That's massive. You could have stood there and pigged out on a Danish and then eaten 20 other Danishes and shoved donuts in your face at the same time, but you didn't, right? So I think that that's the three things. Find a mentor, make tangible goals that are not food related, and be accountable to yourself for your journey. Some people like record themselves on their phone. Just, hey, it's me. It's day 27 of being carnivore. This is how I feel. I'm in a group like from this butcher that I love, a local butcher. And in that group, they do specials. So whenever they're doing like a buy this, get this for free or whatever. And one of the butchers has now started carnivore. And how he makes himself accountable is he gets up in the group and he does a little video. Hey, it's week 1, it's week 2, it's whatever. I now weigh this much. This is my current photo. This is the photo I started with. And it's fantastic because everybody is supporting him, everybody. And it's great because he's such a public figure, not necessarily a public figure sort of outside of this group, but because there's so many people that love this butcher and they know who he is, and he's the manager of one of the stores and yada yada. And that's what he does. He gets into this sort of private Facebook group and he's like, I'm on carnivore. This is what I do. So having that accountability is really important. And I think they all sort of tie in together, but they also work independently. So if you can't find a mentor, you can still journal, keep yourself accountable, and create the goals. If you do have a mentor and you do have the goals, but you don't have the accountability, well, the mentor can still keep you accountable, right? So those three things, they can work independently of each other and they can work together. And I think that if anybody wants to kick off carnivore or is thinking about it, it's not like one of these things like you have to have all these things before you start. You'll find people along the way, but join local groups, join Facebook groups, Instagram groups, listen to podcasts, watch stuff like this, reach out to people. I had so many people reach out to me after my last interview with Dave, just saying like, hey, you mentioned that you had a great doctor, are they in this area? If they're good, I want to go to them. So just different things like that. Don't be afraid to reach out to people. Like, we're all just everyday run-of-the-mill people, right? Well, I'd rather help out a person that's keen to go on carnivore. Like, I'm not going to be holding that information back. So I think that's probably the best advice I could give to someone if they're considering going on carnivore.
Teeyana, that's excellent advice. I really like it because you talk about accountability and also like rewarding yourself once you reach a certain milestone, and also keeping a journal. I feel like they're all very realistic depending on the journey of someone. Another always different. So I think it's awesome. Teeyana, my last question is about the future perspective. What's your future perspective on carnivore? Do you see it being in a good light or in a negative light? Good light meaning we'll see more people joining into the community because they see a lot of healing. They're listening a lot more to podcasts. They're hearing more influencers in different social media sites, and they also want to heal, their health issues. And at the same time, negative issues, maybe censorship, media pushing back, or meat prices going high. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely think like all of that plays a part, right? I think when I started carnivore, there was a pretty good community of people. Like we had people like Bill Knott, and we had Kerry from Homestead How, and we had a bunch of people that had already been on the carnivore journey for some time. I think what Kerry's doing specifically, though, with the creation of the carnivore documentary, I think that's going to turn the table a little bit, because up until now, it's and I'm sure this happens in the US as well, but here when they talk about carnivore in the sort of general mainstream media, it's the fad diet. And it's like, well, no, if you've been part of the low carb, even keto community for even 5 minutes, as I said to you before, I was part of the community from 2015 or so, and I had heard about carnivore then, but carnivore seemed like, oh no, that's way restrictive, right? Like you got to be hardcore. Like in my head, it was almost like you've got to be an athlete to do carnivore, because you've got to have a particular body composition and fitness level, and that's the way I sort of thought of it. So I think once a really high level documentary like what Kerry's doing from Homestead How, once that actually releases, that is going to snowball things. I think we're at the cusp. I don't think we're far off. I definitely think there's definitely a lot more podcast influencers and people involved and channels to watch, because there's so many people who at different points in time, like yourself, like me, have come along the carnivore journey and just gone, this is changing my life and I want it to change everybody else's life, because I can't believe it's in our faces and no one's doing anything about it, right? So I definitely think that the community has increased exponentially, even from the point that I started. So number one, that's fantastic. Number two, I think the fact that straight off the bat, there was a lot of different doctors that came in and were supportive of carnivore, but supportive in the medical perspective and scientific perspective. So I know there hasn't been a lot of scientific research done in carnivore specifically. There has been some done in keto and looking at the benefits, especially for kids with, neurodivergent kids and stuff. There's a lot of studies being done on that. So I think carnivore is getting to that point that it's going to start being a little bit more, it's getting to the point that the anecdotal claims being made need support, because it can't be that so many people around the world, as I said several times, can't be that so many people from around the world, from different countries, from different genetic makeups, from different cultural backgrounds, men, women, it doesn't matter, can all have the exact same results, right? So it's getting to the point that much more serious scientific research is probably going to kick off about carnivore. But again, that depends on what lobbies support and whether or not lobbies relating to food and food guidance in several major countries, whether who are they going to be sponsored by? Are they going to be sponsored by Coca-Cola, or are they going to be sponsored by, the beef industries and that kind of stuff? So all of that, there's always that political game, right, in the background of things. I think that when it comes to the cost of meat and food and just stuff in general, I mean, it's crazy. It's worldwide. Everything is so expensive at the moment. I think people probably need to research reaching out to local farmers, doing pasture to plate type arrangements, or like us, my horse's farrier actually does cows as well. So we've got a big cow. It's about 500 and something kilos. And obviously that's, once it gets, sort of divvied up, it's not going to be that much, but it's a huge cow. And that's going for, I think, 4 families, because we're all going to end up with about 70 to 80 kilos of meat from a grass-fed cow. So I think that's the way that people have to start considering things. They have to start looking at going back to that maybe old-fashioned way of living, where you have, you go and buy a cow from a farmer and it gets butchered and that's your meat, right? Because I live in the country, that's how we live anyway. We tend to, even when we were having fruits and veggies, we'd get it's from your neighbor's garden or your garden or from the local farm produce shop. So we've always eaten very, very clean. But I think more people that are not in those rural areas need to start doing that a lot more. Supporting their local farmers, cutting out the middleman, that kind of thing. So I think the carnivore becoming more legitimate, I suppose, could be the right word. It's on the cusp. I don't think it's far off. I think that there's so many people now talking about it. So many people. I can't remember the guy's name. I think it's Carnivore. It's not Carnivore Ray. It's that other fella. He's really super fit, but his videos are hilarious because he quite often gets a claim, like he'll see someone makes a claim about something like, against carnivore, and he'll be cutting up, this gigantic steak, eating it like, oh yeah, like, does it look like and he's super fit, like, and he'll be like, oh
Oh,
yeah,
Dr.
does it look
Sean
like...
Baker.
Oh, Sean Baker, but
Dr.
there's
Sean
another guy
Baker,
as well.
right?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
there's another fella, a younger guy, and he kind of does a similar thing where he'll have
Oh,
like a
okay.
full platter. He's friends with Carnivore Ray, I believe. I can't remember his name now. But he does a lot of that, like where he's disputing the facts. But I think, as I said as well, because we have the doctors, so you have Dr. Sean Baker, you have Dr. Chafee, you have, Dr. Kiltz, you have Dr. Philip Ovadia. You've got all these people I think Dr. Baker is like an orthopedic surgeon. I'm not 100% sure. Dr. Chafee is like a neurosurgeon. Dr. Avadia is a cardiologist. Like you've got doctors that are pretty high up. They're specialists in their field, and there's so many doctors now that are coming forward, about carnivore. So I think that you've already got, off the bat, you've already got that medical community that is there to dispute potential medical misinformation or claims that people might make against carnivore. Because, you've got look at Dr. Chafee, how fit he is. He's ridiculously fit, super fit, and he's in surgery doing surgical things all day, and he survives just on beef. And there's nothing wrong with him. He's healthy as anything. He looks fantastic, super fit. Like you can't sit there and look at him and say, oh, he's got some particular genetic makeup that makes him more superior than others. He doesn't. He's just like every other general person, So I think that having doctors like Dr. Baker and Dr. Chafee, who are super fit, who are doing things like sports, weightlifting, rugby, all that kind of stuff, and they're medical professionals, and they're following a carnivore diet, I think that that's giving a lot of legitimacy to the space already. It's no more like, oh, it's a fad, oh, it's just a trend. It's not any more of that. It's starting to gain legitimacy because people are actually going, well, wait a minute, look at this bloke. He's doing deadlifts and he's like 70, and he doesn't look a day over 70 or whatever, whatever it might be. Like Dr. Kiltz, I know, is also ridiculously fit. And, so I think that we're not far. I don't think we're far from that point in time where carnivore starts being a little bit more legitimate. And as a result of that, I think it might get to the point that food, like in social settings, may be a little bit more easier to get. Like you can say, can I have a carnivore option, and you're not going to be looked at like, oh, you're just going to eat meat. You're not going to have chips and salad. Yeah, no, I don't want chips and salad. I want steak. I just want the steak. I don't want the chips and salad. Like, like my dad was saying, him and my mum went to the pub with some friends and it was $52 for a steak with chips and salad. And my dad's like, I paid $52 just to eat the steak. And he's like, for $52, I could have bought 5 steaks and eaten at home. And I'm like, well, you're the one that wants to go out. So I think that there's a lot of, when it comes to socially eating and eating out, there's just not a lot of opportunities. Particularly, maybe I'm talking about it from my perspective because I live in the country. So maybe it's more a perspective for me. Maybe people that live in the capital cities, it's a little bit easier for them. You can get more carnivore options, or you can say, I don't want chips and salad with that kind of thing. But yeah, I just think that it'll get to the point that food will be the same way that vegan food is available everywhere. Same way that carnivore only options, I think, will be available sort of everywhere soon. And I don't think we're far off. I really do think that we're on the precipice of it. I think that we're kind of teetering at the top of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you said. I think we're not far off. I'm thinking maybe like 5 to 10 years, or maybe even
Mm,
less. And
mm.
also, yeah, like you said in the beginning, it's all gonna play a part. Like, with the meat prices going high, more people joining in. I think they're all gonna be vital at some point. Yeah. Teeyana, if people want to reach out to you or follow you, where's the best place to connect with you?
Yeah, so I did used to have a specific profile like just for carnivore, but it just got too much. I had too many social media profiles to manage. I do breed dogs and work with my dogs and train dogs, so they can find me at Stormforge Dobermans. That's my kennel profile, but that's the one that I'm probably most active on. And I'm usually doing stuff with dogs on there, but because I'm most active on there, if they want to message me or whatever, it's probably best to reach out that way. And then I can sort of respond or, share emails or whatever it might be.
Awesome. I'm gonna make sure to post them in the description so people can reach you. Teeyana,
Hmm.
thank you again for joining me. I really enjoyed listening to your story and listening to your perspective. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.